Okie dokie. Yeah. I don't think we ever really throw away a hand that has a 2-drop into Divide by 0. That's usually too good to pass up on. We are missing a second red source for Unexpected Windfall currently. But we have enough land drops that shouldn't be too much of a concern. Even if we don't end up playing it on curve. That's fine as long as we're not missing land drops. What do you think of 1 or 2 Check for Traps in the main deck? I think Check for Traps is much too expensive to play. I've seen people put it in the sideboard, and I just don't like that. Break Expectations, I think, is a better card, and it's not a card that I'm against playing, but I want to try seeing how a version of this deck that is more oriented around answers plays. Break Expectations, I guess, is sort of an answer, in a sense. Fearsome Whelp. Okay, sure. So opponent is on blue-red dragons. We get to answer their Fearsome Whelp, so their hand probably doesn't do very much now. Do I want to Expressive Iteration here? I'm not going to get a really better opportunity, and because we answered that Whelp, I'm not worried about them jamming a 3-drop here. Yeah, this is when Expressive Iteration isn't very good. When it just is Anticipate. Alright, well, at least it's not stuck rotting in our hand. And Celestus does help us find second red source. Isn't Break Expectations just a horrid card? No, Break Expectations is a very solid card, I believe. Okay. No third land, but a Fearsome Whelp. Gotcha. The fact that your opponent gets to draft a card from Break Expectations is not really too much of a downside, especially when you're playing Divide by 0, and the card that's stuck in their hand makes Teachings of the Archaics better. Kunio was saying I was trolling by putting it in my deck. No, I'm pretty happy with the card. I think that it helps. The matchups that are tough, it helps. The matchups that are easy, it doesn't. But then you sideboard it out against aggro. It might be that it's not necessarily a card that you should be playing 4 of in your main deck. That I'm willing to believe. But I have been pretty consistently impressed by it. What matchups are tough? For Esper, mirrors mostly are, I think, the toughest matchups, and I think having access to hand hate in those matchups is very important. Although I guess it's even better for Grixis to have access to hand hate, because clearing the way for an Unexpected Windfall is such a big deal. But how am I supposed to do this? Am I supposed to just jam Sorin and downtick? I think I'm not. I think I'm supposed to hold up Divide by 0. But maybe that means I should be playing some number of Break Expectations in the sideboard of Grixis. I don't know if that's better than Go Blank once you're combining it with Unexpected Windfall. Or once you're combining it with Galvanic Iteration, is what I mean to say. Yes, I would like to draw a card. That Behold the Multiverse would have been tempting to have had. Let's see. Yeah, okay, I think I can get rid of this Sorin. This Behold the Multiverse seems better than that. Instant speed card advantage is pretty good. No, opponent, I don't really feel like letting you make land drops. Kind of bummed that I drew the Sorin into the Behold the Multiverse instead of the other way around, because having been able to foretell the Behold the Multiverse last turn would have been pretty appealing. I'm wondering if I'm dividing by 0 this Fearsome Whelp before it can get a trigger off. And if so, I would just do that divide by 0 now. I think I probably should. They could already have other stuff in their hand that's cheaper, which, yeah, bummer if that's the case. Am I going for Mascot Exhibition here or Environmental Sciences? Probably Mascot Exhibition. I do think that I need to figure out a way to close this game before my opponent gets to play a bunch of creatures. Alright, let's start by drawing 2. Hit an untapped land. Excellent. So now we get to Unexpected Windfall, get some mana advantage, and try to leverage that into something major. Okay, opponent has an Expressive Iteration. If I am casting Unexpected Windfall, what am I discarding? Or am I just supposed to Behold the Multiverse and not get the mana advantage? Ooh, opponent missed on lands with the Expressive Iteration. Rough. I'm probably supposed to Behold the Multiverse. I do want 1 land. I don't want the second. Alright, Jwari Disruption's fine. You will take action, draw a card, discard a card. And I think I'm probably pretty happy discarding the Spikefield Hazard, even though they got a Fearsome Whelp. Jwari Disruption seems like, at least in the short term, it's likely to have a little more utility. Lier seems excellent. I don't want to play Lier yet, though, because... well, 1, that shuts off Jwari Disruption. 2... I guess it does hold up Divide by 0, huh? That is pretty good. As much as I would like to just jam 2 Unexpected Windfalls first, maybe... well... yeah, probably I'm just supposed to play Lier. Alright. Divide by 0 is still a pretty good card. Sure. Expressive Iteration, I'm fine with. They get some card advantage, but I'm not exposing myself to a Dragonfire now if I use any of my spells for anything. I guess, depending on how this turn plays out, I could Abrade Orb of Dragonkind. Oh, and by looting away the Spikefield Hazard now, if they play the Whelp, I can actually Spikefield it. Although if I do that, I am exposed to Dragonfire. Would I be okay with being exposed to Dragonfire in this spot? No, I'm not, because they didn't cast it with the orb. Okay, cool. Well, that solves that conundrum. Fading Hope. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So we can Spikefield Hazard the Whelp. They should have done this in the opposite order, and then I couldn't have made this play. And we can destroy the orb while they are tapped out. And then our Lier goes back to our hand. And then we draw a land, and that's super swell. Then we can just redo this whole thing again with our opponent in the same spot as before. Seems pretty good. And I'm willing to play a land drop from hand that is untapped. I doubt our opponent will be capable of doing nothing, and not just instantly conceding, but this does technically give us the ability to play Behold the Multiverse at the end of turn, if that sounds good. More likely I would just Unexpected Windfall anyway, but might as well represent more. And if my opponent does just immediately Dragonfire the Lier here, then casting one of these 4-drops probably is the best move. Okay, the Expressive Iteration, that's fine. Divide by 0 and Fading Hopes. That means our opponent is playing Lier in their Dragons list? That's kind of wild, but okay. Yeah, that resolves. I'm fine with that. I don't need to cast any of my Lier stuff when I can just Unexpected Windfall and get a mana advantage and then replay the Lier. I could have Divide by 0 to their Divide by 0, but I don't think I like that quite as much as resolving an Unexpected Windfall here. There's an Epiphany, just waiting to find a Galvanic Iteration now. But in the meantime, we can play Lier and continue drawing cards and getting mana advantage. Curious what the opponent's ratio of dragons is, because when building Izzet with this many spells, the thing that I kind of consistently found was that you were playing so many things that weren't dragons that Fearsome Whelp and Orb of Dragonkind just weren't super appealing. Alright, let's cast this Windfall, make some additional mana. Alright, more A-Alrund's Epiphanies, sure, why not? Do I want to tax their mana by dividing by 0, this divide by 0? Nah, probably not. Yep. Opponent has a bunch of cards. That's all fine. We have more. That's all that matters. Goldspan Dragon gives the opponent some mana. Alright. Well, that's a start for them. Fearsome Whelp instead of Teachings of the Archaics, huh? Not what I would have really expected, but okay. Dragons in their hand cost less, sure. Expressive Iteration, see if we can find a Galvanic. We do find a Galvanic. Alright, I don't think we want the Unexpected Windfall. I think we do want the Riverglide Pathway. How much mana do we have here? How many extra turns are we taking? I'd like to take one set of extra turns. Can I take 2? I can take 2, yes. And then we will... oh, I suppose 3. 2 extra turns. 3 extra normal turns. Then we untap, and we play a Lier, and we play a couple of Windfalls. And then I guess we probably play the Hullbreaker Horror after that, and then we probably have won the game. Yeah, that seems good. I like that. Alright, come on. You can do it, lands. You can be in play. And we kill the Whelp, and we bounce the Goldspan, and the opponent can concede roughly when I attack with the Lier. No? Not yet? Okay. There we go. Alright. I had a feeling it was going to be about then. Kudos to the opponent for sticking it out about a second and a half longer than I was expecting. Okay. So, a Dragon's deck that gives up a lot of the nut draws in order to try to have more card advantage. I feel like playing Orb of Dragonkind and Fearsome Whelp is still really brave. You're gonna have to mulligan a lot of opening hands, but alright. So, Infernal Grasp, a bunch of Disdainful Strokes, maybe Hullbreaker Horror? I should probably still be... well, no, not against a deck that's playing Divide by 0 and Fading Hope. Not then, I don't think. But we're willing to cut Abrades. Never concede when playing against Chris, it'll gain respect. Yeah. I respect opponents who stick it out and don't concede until they have actually 0 outs. And the closer you get to that, the more I approve. Do I take Meathook Massacre? I still don't think it's actually good. I don't really think Fading Hope is great either, but it is slightly better against Fearsome Whelp on the draw and against Goldspan Dragon, which I assume this deck has to lean a little heavier on. Do I still want to play Sorin? I don't love Sorin. I suppose I could try to board into Go Blanks? To Galvanic Iteration Go Blank? Is that just really questionable? I don't know. We'll go without it for now. Mertcam is a web celebrity, the meme guy from Reddit. Ooh, okay. Do they usually make Magic content? Or a general YouTube person? Okay. Disdainful Stroke and Infernal Grasp. Not saying no to. Galvanic Iteration, not useful yet. Yeah. Opponent's Dragons list mulligans. It seems like a familiar song and dance. Mulligans again. Yeah, I feel for you. I just really don't like the idea of putting Expressive Iteration in a Dragons deck. Expressive Iteration is such a extremely underwhelming card when your curve is so high. Alright, so I don't have answer to a Whelp. Ah, my opponent doesn't have any cards, though. Yeah, I think the likelihood is that my opponent has a Whelp given how much they mulliganed, so I don't want to tap out underneath the ability to bounce it with Fading Hope. But now we can foretell Behold the Multiverse and just continue having answers to Whelp and making land drops. I do probably have to do this now to make a land drop, though, which is unfortunate, because I am probably going to discard a lot of cards to hand size. What am I discarding here? So many good cards, so little time. Probably Galvanic Iteration. I'm not going to need that for a while, I don't think. And my opponent's kind of just not playing Magic. Yeah, they agreed. Still, kudos to them for sticking that out as long as they did. But that's the kind of concerns I have about Dragons as a deck in a nutshell, yes. Alright, well... this hand looks bad, so we'll keep it. Clerics, I think, has gotten has felt solved for me since figuring out that Hullbreaker Horror is just really, really solid against them. But I don't doubt that having Sorin is still helpful there. Once again, opponent on turn 2, Fearsome Whelp. Okay, we'll see how that does for him. Unfortunately, I don't actually have a response because I'm on the draw, so we're just going to have to hope the opponent doesn't have the follow-up set of perfect cards. Hopefully. Oh, they did. That's a bummer. Alright. So I lack any good responses to this, unfortunately. Can't lose my lands. Alright, don't mind having a Blightstep Pathway. And we do have Unexpected Windfall into Meathook Massacre, which can help us out here. We get to bounce that Goldspan Dragon, which would otherwise be somewhat annoying. And opponent keeps putting down their hand. I think I'm dead, though. The Goldspan Dragon is a heck of a card. I could Meathook Massacre for 2, probably still be dead. That's a bummer. How do we get out of this? I need my opponent to not play the Goldspan Dragon for some reason. Yeah, not quite good enough. The opponent actually having the 1 extra Fearsome Whelp, I think, does kill us here. Because if I didn't have to Spikefield Hazard a Fearsome Whelp to stay alive this turn, then I could sack the Marsh, play a land, and cast Meathook for 4. But instead I cannot do that, because I am down 1 treasure now. Yep, okay. Well, Dragons continues to be a good deck when it does not have to mulligan into Oblivion. So we get to play Infernal Grasp, and Horror, and Disdainful Strokes, and we cut Abrades, and we cut Sorins. And I'm still uncertain on Meathook Massacre, but I think I'm supposed to keep it in with this deck. And then what else are we cutting? What did we cut last time? Did I not bring in the second Horror? Might have been what we were doing. I'm still pretty uncertain on whether I should be playing Expressive Iteration at all. Probably not. I'm also wildly uncertain on whether I should be playing Fading Hope or not, though. Let's see, this was a version that was playing red and white, which means it might have access to the 5 mana 4/3 haster. How much am I supposed to care about that? Is it enough to cut Fading Hope for Abrade? Uncertain. Let's give this a go, though. We'll try the 2 Hullbreaker Horrors and see how that feels different, if at all. Take the play. Abrade is fairly narrow in... okay. In the sense that mostly all it does is hit 3 toughness dragons. But it does also hit Whelp, and their deck doesn't do a lot if you hit the Whelp. Yeah, this is why I don't love Fading Hope against dragons. I should probably be cutting Fading Hope for like Abrades on the play. Yeah, this would be a nicer spot to be casting an Abrade. Also, if they played a Fearsome Whelp, that'd be a nicer spot to be casting an Abrade. I have to think about this sequencing a lot here, because if I want to cast Galvanic Iteration Behold, I need to have double blue. If I want to cast an Unexpected Windfall, I need double red, and if I want to cast Meathook Massacre at some point, I need double black. If I play Clearwater Pathway on black, then I have access to double red off Blightstep. If I play Blightstep on black, then I have access to double blue. I think there is a much higher likelihood that given this hand, I am probably going to want to Galvanic Behold next turn. So I think I play around that and then leave myself open to choosing whether I want to have double black or double red next turn. Alright. I'm pretty comfortable playing Abrade instead of Fading Hope now, as we've seen 3 important creatures that it hits. Would I rather bounce Stormcharge Slasher? I think that I'm just Galvanic Beholding this turn. We will keep a red source. And we will keep Unexpected Windfall. And we'll barely get 2 Unexpected Windfalls. We turn it back to Day, which decreases the amount of incoming damage by a little bit. But presumably they play a dragon here, and then hit us with that. Yeah. No, they play a tiny creature instead. Sweet. So that gives us the opening to Meathook Massacre for 3, if that is what we want to do. Is that what I want to do? Probably is what I want to do. That's a lot of Unexpected Windfalls. So alternatively, I could Fading Hope the Reckless Stormseeker and Unexpected Windfall. I think that might be what I want to do even more, because then that just sets up for a Meathook Massacre next turn on a bunch of creatures. But I guess not on Reckless Stormseeker. So by Unexpected Windfall, Fading Hope, I'm on 8 mana next turn, but I don't have a 1-drop to cast with Hullbreaker. I think I play Meathook because I don't really like the idea of leaving them with a Reckless Stormseeker in hand. Opponent plays Adult Gold Dragon, sure. We lose some life, sure. The Den of the Bugbear is gonna be a problem. Okay. So I am set up for, if I don't use any treasures, Horror plus Fading Hope, or Horror plus Galvanic Iteration next turn. Although I think it more likely that the opponent's probably going to animate Den of the Bugbear here. Oh, playing that pre-combat's a mistake, but okay. Okay, I thought I was going to get to Galvanic Iteration, Fading Hope, the Den, and the Adult Gold Dragon, but I will accept just bouncing 2 dragons instead. I would like to draw literally any 1-drop to pair with my Horror. And divide by 0 instead, huh? Okay. Where does that put the opponent? Certainly puts me at, I think, being happy that I have Horror in my deck. Okay. I think I just want a Galvanic Windfall and then divide by 0 the Adult Gold Dragon. I think having that many cards and that much mana is preferable to having a Horror in play but going to 4. Okay, Spikefield Hazards are oddly very excellent draws here. Opponent, you can put that Gold Dragon back in your hand. I think I probably just get Teachings of the Archaics here. I feel like I'm probably going to be able to just keep bouncing stuff with Hullbreaker Horror for a while, and that'll probably get me to a point where I have fewer cards in hand than them. I think we should have this on lock. Alright. Dragon. We play Horror. Spikefield face. Return Dragon to hand. They have cast this single dragon a lot of times. Here's some Whelp, sure. Yeah, I don't really want their spells to be cheaper, so I'm going to waste a treasure to cast this Spikefield. We get to put the orb back in their hand. None of their spells get any cheaper. Sounds good. Opponent concedes. Also sounds good. They didn't even get to let me resolve my Teachings of the Archaic. Frankly, very disappointing. Okay. So even though I said I wanted Abrade, I feel like I should have brought Abrade in on the play. Here on the draw, I'm not willing to cut Fading Hope because I need more answers to turn to Whelp. But I do want Abrade, so what do I want it for? Celestus, maybe? Are there too many bounce effects? I don't think so. It just so happens that Divide by Zero and Fading Hope both play really well with Lier, but I don't think that's like a function of too many bounce effects, as it is with just those kind of happen to be the effects that are playable and good with Lier. We could end up, or there could be a parallel world in which instead of playing all these bounce effects, we were just playing, you know, hard removal spells. Like, maybe Fading Hope is Frostbite in a different universe. And I don't know. I wouldn't say that that's better or worse gameplay-wise. I don't know. Am I just not supposed to be playing as many? I could just, like, cut an A-Alrund's Epiphany and a Galvanic Iteration, I suppose, for some Abrades. And just try to lower my curve when I'm on the draw? Maybe that's correct. Wouldn't you go to one horror only, cut Celestus, add 2 Abrades? I don't know. I'm still not entirely certain how good I think horror is against dragons. But I'm curious to kind of test that out for the time being. This hand is both pretty good and pretty bad. I'm going to keep it. I'd love to play Stormcarved Coast first so that I could be guaranteed to have a second red source for this Unexpected Windfall off of the Riverglide Pathway. But I think that it's too important that I hold up an answer to a turn 2 Whelp because that's the easiest way for me to lose here. Yeah, this doesn't play very well against an orb, does it? Huh. I didn't really consider that now that I can't hold up Disdainful Stroke on 2 from having done it this way, I'm potentially even worse off. Okay, just Moonveil Regent, sure. This is probably... It's funny how Moonveil Regent is like a complete nothing card, but if they'd played Terror of the Peaks here, I would be really scared. The level of difference between those two is kind of wild. Is this a nerf standard deck? I think it might be. I guess we're not actually playing literally any historic cards, are we? I can't really afford to play Teachings here, unfortunately. Ooh. Spikefield Hazard's an awkward draw. I guess I'm probably still just supposed to Environmental Sciences for a mountain anyway. I guess they just played Moonveil Regent. I can play Spikefield Hazard and hope my opponent doesn't draw Terror of the Peaks. I am willing to take that gamble. I think. In which case I should have fetched a swamp for the Meathook Massacre instead of this red source. I was expecting that I was going to play the mountain and hold up Disdainful Stroke before deciding I didn't want to do that. And if I was playing the Spikefield Hazards as my second red source, then I could just, you know, fetch better. Okay. So if my opponent just keeps jamming Moonveil Regent, I'm not that concerned. But they did play a blue source, which means they could be playing Test of Talents or Disdainful Stroke possibly now, which is scary. Sure, Moonveil Regent for the opponent. Okay. Rahilda means no on the opponent holding up a counterspell here. Okay, do I want to get rid of Meathook Massacre and be guaranteed a land drop to play alongside Hullbreaker Horror? Or do I want to get rid of Stormcarved Coast so that I can Meathook Massacre potentially? I think I get rid of Stormcarved Coast. No lands, or at least no untapped lands. There's an untapped land, okay. How do we want to sequence this? Play a land, block Rahilda with Hullbreaker Horror. Rahilda would have double strike if I instant speeded Horror. That's no good. I think I'm probably just supposed to play Meathook Massacre for 4 and then play Jwari Disruption as a tap land? I don't love that, though. How willing am I to let Hullbreaker Horror die if my opponent has Dragonfire? I could just sorcery speed the Hullbreaker Horror so the Rahilda doesn't transform. You know, I guess that's actually probably what I'm supposed to do. Then I can block the Rahilda. I'm not getting value by getting the snap block off with Hullbreaker Horror, but I think it's just worth preventing a tiny bit of damage here when I'm at a totally comfortable life total and gonna take over the game anyway. Or does a tiny, or Moonveil Regent does a tiny bit of damage to us. We are fine with that. It is not looking like the opponent is going to have a clean answer to Horror. Okay. So, if I Meathook Massacre for 4, I have 1 mana available. It's not quite where we want to be, I don't think. What's the best way to do this? Should I just pass the turn? Should I attack with Horror? I think I'm probably supposed to attack with Horror and try to start racing. I was hoping they'd block and then try to Dragonfire the Horror, because I could blow that out pretty hard with Infernal Grasp, bounce a creature, kill a creature. So, options. Meathooking for 4 is kind of vulnerable because I get pretty blown out by a Dragonfire. Do I want to cast nothing here, or do I want to bounce something? I think I probably want to cast Unexpected Windfall. And just slightly diminish the amount of damage my opponent can do here. Yeah, they negate me. That's not terribly surprising. I figure I'm fine with that. Chris, how come you don't have any cards from Alchemy? Because this looks like a standard deck. I think we just didn't bother putting any cards from Alchemy in it, and that's not true actually. We're playing an Alchemy version of Epiphany, so it's not quite a standard deck. Let's see. Let's go with kill the Moonveil Regent and return the Reckless Stormseeker to their hand, and we're doing this in response to Moonveil triggers so they don't get to draw any cards. This is a worse than standard deck, yes, but it is definitely a different deck from the standard decks in that choices like Sorin and Meathook Massacre I don't think make sense in standard, but are viable ways, I think, to attack the metagame in Alchemy, which is, if nothing else, an interesting look into how the power level of cards contextually changes with the format that they're trying to attack. No, not my Spikefield Hazard. I would have liked to have drawn that. No, and the opponent got to draw a card. But also the opponent is tapped out now. And also we drew a Spikefield Hazard, which is pretty cool. So now I get to just kill all my opponent's stuff, and I like that. We will return the orb to their hand, you know, because why not? Oh, that's kind of cool. I can bounce Meathook Massacre with Hullbreaker Horror. Yeah, opponent does 0 damage to me, and then concedes. Cool. Alright, well, both of those games did make Hullbreaker Horror look like a very valid way to beat dragons. I'm not entirely certain with whether I sequenced that second, or I guess third game correctly, but especially the opening turns I'm really uncertain on. But yeah, dragons. Not a scary deck if all it does is play very bad 4-drops without any acceleration.